You've done the hard part. You built a game that people actually want to play and a community that wants to back it. This is the stage where those digital files become wood tokens, printed rulebooks, and linen cards. It's where you'll meet your manufacturer, talk timelines and specs, and it's the part where you're going to make hundreds of small decisions that are all going to impact your cost, quality, and your sanity. Because here's the truth, even the best designed game can fall apart if it's poorly manufactured. A bad batch of components, a miscommunication in materials, or a delayed shipment can all sink your campaign's profit margins before you even ship that first box. So in this video, we're gonna break down everything you need to know to get your game manufactured right the first time. From choosing the right partner, to managing quotes and proofs, to keeping your production on schedule. Plus, I called up Tyler Lipchen from Panda Game Manufacturing to help us understand not just what we need to have prepared for a manufacturer, but what a manufacturer is gonna cost. And if you stick around to the end, I'll give you a free digital copy of our book, Crowdfunded. This covers everything you need to know, not just stuff about manufacturing, on how to take your game from just an idea to fully funded on Kickstarter. So let's dive into all things board game manufacturing. Let's start by talking about when you want to work with a manufacturer. Typically, this phase should begin when your mechanics and art are all finalized. If you've playtested the rules, you're satisfied with the design, and you don't anticipate making any more changes, that's likely when you're ready to call up a manufacturer. And having all of those things in order first is gonna help you avoid costs later on. So if you're in that stage and you are ready, how do you choose the right manufacturer? And if you're not quite in that stage yet and you need a little more help, check out the video that I've linked below on how to design a board game. This covers everything from A to Z before you even get to that manufacturing stage, and including that manufacturing stage. The board game manufacturing world is relatively small, but there are clear leaders who deliver high quality products on budget and on time consistently. And here's just a few examples of some trusted manufacturers in the space. There's Longpack Games in China. They're one of the most popular options for Kickstarter games. They're known for strong communication and handling a wide variety of components. You can't mention board game manufacturing without talking about Panda Game Manufacturing. They're in China and Brazil, and they're highly experienced with deluxe games. They offer design feedback and full-service packaging solutions. Plus, they've been used by some really recognizable titles like Wingspan and Flamecraft. And there's What's Games, also in China. They have competitive pricing, they're good for medium-scale publishers, and they're trusted by creators who are scaling up after that first campaign. So what do you look for when shopping around at manufacturers to decide who's best for you? Look for a manufacturer with a strong track record of other crowdfunding titles. Make sure they're willing to send pre-production samples and white box proofs. Look for clear quoting, including options for inserts or stretch goals. And a pro tip for when you're shopping around, always request samples of similar components before committing, and ask other creators about their experiences. A lot of folks are willing to share. Okay, you know you're ready for a manufacturer. You've looked around for the right one. Now, what do you need to bring to them to make sure that your game goes from prototype to polished product? Before production begins, you need to lock in your specifications. This includes a component list, things like cards, boards, tokens, and miniatures. And sizing, things like my card is gonna be 63 to 88 millimeters. And materials, things like my cards are gonna be paper, but my tokens are gonna be wood or chipboard or plastic. And then there's the finishes for those materials. Maybe I'm putting linen texture on my cards, or foil stamping, or UV gloss. And last but not least, your packaging design. Make sure your box art, die lines, and rules are final and proofed. Using a bill of materials can help you keep track of all of this. And your manufacturer can use this and reference it to quote prices and timelines. And a pro tip for this part, over-designing your game with too many custom components can balloon your costs and delay timelines. Prioritize components that enhance gameplay. Okay, you know what you're bringing to the manufacturer, you know your specs, but how many games are you actually ordering? Let's talk MOQs. Most manufacturers require a minimum order quantity. In this space, it'll be somewhere between 500 and 2,000 games. The more units you produce, the lower your cost per unit, but the higher your upfront cost and your storage burden. For example, a game that costs $12 a unit at 1,000 units might cost $650 per unit at 5,000 units. We'll go into more of the cost math when I talk to Tyler later on in this video, but it's a good idea to start thinking about what are the minimum orders that I would need for my campaign. You want to add in a buffer like 10 to 15%. This is for things like damaged items or lost inventory. You wouldn't want to end up in a position where somebody who backed a game isn't getting a game and you don't have any to give. All right, now that we're grooving a little bit, let's talk timeline and communication. Listen clearly. Game production is a multi-month process. And here's what a typical timeline might look like once files are submitted. There's digital proofing, which might take 1 to 2 weeks, and that's PDF proofs of every component. There's pre-production samples, which will take 2 to 3 weeks, and those are physical samples of final materials. Then there's mass production. Plan for 6 to 10 weeks on that. Your full print run is manufactured in this stage. And finally, we have freight and fulfillment. That's about 4 to 12 weeks, and this is where games are shipped out to the distribution hubs. But you're gonna wanna build in some padding. There can be delays for anything. Things like Lunar New Year, port congestion, or material shortages can all add weeks to this timeline. And another pro tip for the timeline and communication, use a tool. Things like Trello or Notion are awesome options. This helps you keep track of deadlines and give approvals. Okay, there is so much going on in this process. You're working with a manufacturer, you're choosing finishes, you're keeping your timeline on track. How are you making sure that you're maintaining quality control throughout all of this? Even great manufacturers can make mistakes, and it's your job to catch them early. But here are some things you can do to help. You want to review digital and physical proofs carefully. Ask for updates and production photos often. And if possible, work with a quality control partner in China. Many creators will use freelancers for this. And tip here, don't sign off on mass production until you've held that final proof in your hands. Okay, that was a lot, but we're not quite through yet. Remember, I called on my friend Tyler Lipchen at Panda Game Manufacturing so that he can help us understand what all of the things we just talked about are actually gonna cost in practice, and how you can estimate them for your project specifically. There are a few standard costs you're gonna encounter that are all gonna influence what your per unit cost is, so let's go through those first. Let's start with your tooling costs. Tooling costs are the expenses associated with designing, developing, and fabricating the tools, molds, dies, and fixtures used in the manufacturing process. And your tooling costs can range depending on how common or how unique your components are. Tyler showed me a bunch of examples of things that a manufacturer is likely to have a mold of on hand. Things like plastic tokens or acrylic gems might cost less because they already have it, where something more unique is going to push your costs up. And after tooling costs, we have your materials costs. Materials cost is really where a lot of the variance is. So a standard token made out of punchboard might not ring you up that high of a bill, but a custom minifigure steel mold, that's gonna cost you. And it could cost you over a $5,000 base. Okay, we talked about minimum order quantity a little bit before, but let's dive in a little deeper. And actually, let's kick it to Tyler to hear exactly how he defines it.
The term you'll hear is minimum order quantity, or MOQ, and that's the minimum number of units that a manufacturer will produce for you for mass production. Mass production machines, like offset printers, they require a lot of setup. Once the machines are running, it's very fast and very affordable, but it takes just as much time and effort to set up a print run for 500 units as it does for 5 or 50,000 units.
So to make sure that cost of setup is worth it, most manufacturers will have that MOQ, or that 500 to 2,000 units we talked about before. And then remember, we also have our per unit cost, which is the total expense to produce a single unit of your product. It's calculated by taking the total production cost by the number of units produced. And how do you get your total product cost? Your total product cost is your tooling cost, materials cost, and any setup cost divided by your order quantity. And there are a couple ways to get an even more accurate estimate for manufacturing your game specifically. The best way is to speak directly to them. Call them up and ask for those estimates. Or you can use a pricing estimator tool. There's one on Panda's website that Tyler gave us that I'll link below. And Tyler gave us a quick trick to get a rough estimate while you're in this process, which is first to find a game that's similar to yours and see what their MSRP is, divide by 5 or 6, and that should be around a good estimate for what your per unit cost is when working with a manufacturer. But remember, this is an estimate. There's a lot of variance, like if you're using super different materials like metals versus punchboard. Okay, we covered a lot of ground, but important ground. Manufacturing is where your vision really becomes real, and it's where small mistakes can turn into big costs. The creators who succeed at this stage are the ones who stay proactive. They ask questions, they review proofs carefully, and they treat their manufacturer like a long-term partner. Because once your game comes off the production line, it's not just a collection of parts. It's the result of every design choice, every test, and every backer's trust in you. Getting this stage right sets the stage for everything that's to come, like launch day and fulfillment. Okay, you made it. And as promised, I linked the free digital copy of our book crowdfunded below, where you can learn more about how to take your game from just an idea to fully funded on Kickstarter.